Good evening and welcome to the February 21st meeting of the San Luis Coastal Unified School District Board of Trustees. The board met in closed session immediately prior to open session, and we discussed student personnel matters in a conference with labor negotiators and anticipated litigation and personnel matters. Do we have we need to vote on the stipulated expulsion that was discussed? If someone could make a motion?
I'll move approval of the stipulated expulsion agreement as presented in closed session.
I'll second.
Hey, Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mr. Buckman.
Yes.
Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
and Ms. Dobler Drew.
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm a yes, so that motion carries 6-0. Do we have consensus on the order of business?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. So next we get right to one of our favorite parts of the board meeting, and that is, hello down there. So student representatives to the board. Did you flip a coin? You know how you want to do this?
I guess I'll be going first.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Hi, it's my first time back in a while, so it's good to see you all.
Good to see you.
Our Moorby High School mock trial team are the SLO County champs. They won last Thursday, defeating Mission College Prep, and our team was undefeated and en route to their championship, where they won many individual awards. Mr. Waldman is our awesome mock trial advisor, and we're the only school in the county to have 2 competitive teams. For Poetry Out Loud, our representative Clarissa Olmos sent out her performance, and it was presented to at the county level last night with the winners of the other local high schools. Winter sports were successful with their playoff runs. All but one team made it. It was great for Shay Dawson, a sophomore, to win a CIF wrestling title in our own gym when we hosted the CIF wrestling tournament a few weekends ago. Spring sports are kicking off with tryouts wrapping up soon. Thursday evening is our spring sports parent information night, which we cover our safe sports policies. Boys volleyball have already had a successful scrimmage against Paso High School, and baseball won their first game this weekend against Bakersfield. Last week, ASB hosted a lunchtime futsal tournament in the small gym, and it was definitely one of our more popular lunchtime events this year, inspired by SLO High when Alana and I went to go visit a few weeks ago. And we're getting pumped up for our neon dance on March 10th. The theme will be revealed the next board meeting. We're also prepping for the Los Osos Middle School Assembly, and our TV, video, and journalism classes are prepping a pirate preview online video for our incoming 8th graders and their families. We just got back from a leadership conference in Bakersfield today, and we came back with ideas that we're interested in implementing at Moorby High School. For example, a senior wall of acceptance letters to all sorts of colleges and programs, painting senior parking spots, painting our bathrooms to make them more fun and inclusive, and greeting students once a week with bubbles, high fives, and fist bumps at entrances to start their days off with a smile. The Dance Fusion Showcase is on March 2nd and 3rd at 6 p.m. at Moorby High School. And this week is National FFA Week, and our FFA program is putting on a lot of fun events. Today was Kiss a Cow Day, where the school nominated our biotechnology teacher, Mr. Gady, to kiss a cow in the quad. And tomorrow is the Farm Olympics, where you could compete with a team of 4. And Thursday is the Ag Experience, where you can see what ag classes have to offer. And then Friday is our Barnyard Ball at 6:30, and we will swing dance that day at lunch to prep. And that is my report.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. The last time I saw you all, we were planning our winter formal dance. That dance came and went, and it was a huge success. Everyone had a really great time. It kind of just shows that when we come together as an ASB class and put together our creative ideas just towards one goal, we can really create a great event. Everything went smoothly and successfully. The students loved the playlist that we put together. A lot of people were screaming the words and just jumping around. And overall, it's just a special night. Definitely a night to remember. So super happy about the winter formal dance. In other ASB news, we had a beach cleanup on Saturday. I know we do a lot of them, but they're super awesome for our students to partake in. Everyone goes to the beach, cleans up, just hangs out with their friends. They're given a free t-shirt and some valuable community service hours. So yeah, hopefully we keep doing the beach cleanups as well. Last week, we also had a Valentine's Day Graham card Valentine's Day Graham sale, which is basically where you get to write a card to any classmate at SLO High with like a nice letter, and then also give them like a rose or like a box of candy or any of the different gifts that we had supplied. So we also dispersed them in third period on Valentine's Day. So some students were just hanging out in class and got a nice note that said like, I love you or something like that as they were going through their day. So that was really nice to do as well. Our intramural futsal tournament has officially concluded. The staff team won. So 5 teachers took on all of the students and were successful. So I'm sure they're going to be boasting about that in the break room and such. But we're next planning to do a March Madness basketball tournament during the actual March Madness basketball tournament. So intramural basketball 3v3 is coming, which I think will be the best one so far. So super excited about that as well. Mamma Mia promotion is officially underway. A lot of flyers are in circulation. I don't know if you've seen them around town. I was actually at work yesterday and out of the corner of my eye, I saw some familiar faces. 2 of our actors that are frequent in our performing arts were up in Mingcraft downtown SLO putting up some posters in the window. So yeah, super exciting for Mamma Mia. We have shows March 10th, 11th, 12th, 16th, 17th, and 18th at 7 p.m. as well as March 11th, 12th, and 18th at 2 p.m. So some day shows as well. So yeah, performing arts never misses. Super excited for that as well. And then spring sports are officially starting. We have boys tennis, baseball, and softball having games this week, and our official grand opening for track and field at 9:30, a ribbon cutting ceremony and everything. That'll be extremely awesome to see as well. It's super great to support our talented athletes with a new track and all that comes with it. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have for everyone. Thank you again. And yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. There's always a lot going on at the high schools, and we love to hear about it. So I would suggest you go get out of the wind while the going's good here on this blowing night tonight. But thank you for coming and sharing the great things going on at the high schools. We really appreciate it. Thanks. Okay, next is item 6.02, which is Monarch Grove highlights.
Good evening, board members. As I get this started, I did want to mention that we've had the Morro Bay High dance team out dancing with our students, and they will be performing at the dance show she was talking about. So if you want to see the little ones dance along with the high school kids, you can come on out to that. All right. My name is Dr. Katie Salcido, and I'm the principal of Monarch Grove Elementary. And I am pleased to share with you some highlights of our school. Last year, I was able to share with you a little bit about everything. And so this year, I wanted to really dive in deeper into just one thing. I could come every night and share something amazing about what's happening at Monarch Grove. But since I just have the one night, I'm going to share with you how we are focusing on student-owned learning. It's a big focus of ours in the staff this year. We have been doing student-owned learning through goal setting. So there's many things that the students are doing in class in our school. One, they are leading. They're leading inside the classroom, outside of the classroom. At our school, everyone is a leader. Each have unique abilities, and we really cherish those in each of our kids and show them how they can lead others. The students are setting goals, which I'll go into more details tonight. They are using their goals, both personal and the class goals, setting action steps to keep themselves focused on areas that they need to grow. They are definitely tracking their progress, which you'll see tonight as well. They are looking at the things that they're doing, reviewing their own actions, and deciding what's leading to their success or what needs to be adjusted to ensure their future success. And then we are celebrating. Every time students are reaching goals, we are recognizing all of the results that they do, because their hard work needs to be rewarded, both individually and as a group. So setting personal goals, here's a few of our students. This is third grade. They set a goal weekly. Personal goals are set in a binder and then tracked throughout the year. These students are setting both behavior goals and academic goals. They have action steps that they list out. We do 2 a week, and there's specific things that they want to do to work towards achieving that goal. They also have accountability partners, someone that they have partnered with in the classroom that they can talk to about their goal and their progress towards achieving that. The goals range from anything from an ST math goal, which you see here, to a behavior goal, something they want to improve in the classroom, or a literature goal, a writing goal, or a reading goal. These students are actually marking on their page whether or not they achieved their action step for the day to work towards their goal. Because if you don't look at it every day, it's probably not going to happen. I wanted to share with you, so the students wanted to be here. They wanted to tell you what it's like to set their own goals. So I have some videos for you to see exactly what the kids are up to. So this first one, here she is. So did you meet your goal? Wow. Okay, good girl. What do you think made you meet your goal? Good job. Okay. I'm not sure if you're able to hear her all the way, but she was reflecting on, so she set a goal to hit ST Math at 73. She actually reached to 76, but the important question was the reflection. So I asked her, what did you do to meet your goal? And she was able to list the action steps that she took that made her have success. Let me try this one. I'm gonna see if I can get you guys some sound.
This is my wildly informed window.
Perfect. Tell me about your goal for this week.
And my goal is to not refuse to do writing. And things that I can do to achieve this goal is ask Jet to help me and get those things friends and find a quiet space to think so I can think.
So he was explaining how he set a goal in writing, and he was listing the things that he would do in order to reach that goal, including finding a quiet space and planning out his writing ahead of time so that he would know what to write. This last one is adorable, but I think you guys are having trouble hearing it, so I think I'll skip that one. Let's move forward. They're amazing children, and they really wanted to share that with you. The other thing we do in addition to personal goals is setting class goals. This particular class has set a goal to, they looked at a need in the classroom, and not enough kids were reading their books at night and bringing in their log. So they decided to set a goal of how many kids could they get to read for 30 minutes and bring in their log. Then they tracked them with these bubblegum stickers. So the teacher checks in with them every day, and they're able to put the bubblegum stickers up there in order to see if they've met their goal. This goes through all grade levels. So here's our TK class setting their own class goals and marking their progress towards it. The first one you saw was 3rd grade. Here's another 3rd grade class also tracking their progress towards their ST Math goals. And then in 5th grade, obviously it looks different, but they're also setting goals. Theirs is a little bit more quantitative and measurable. By the end of trimester 1, 80% of our class will master multiplication facts, and they're tracking them. You'll notice that there are not kid names on the popcorns. There were not kid names on the butterflies. It's just progress as a group. So it's it's public celebrating, not public shaming. It's all about how are we doing together as a group. Hopefully you can hear this one. This is kindergarten. So if anyone thinks that even young kids can't set goals, this 5-year-old is going to explain their class goal.
And we're gonna have a popsicle party. That's our goal. So we're all walking together to make that big goal.
So he's just saying that their class goal is to read 400 sight words, and they're all working together to reach that goal. And I asked him, what do you do when you read a sight word? And they get to put a monarch butterfly stamp on the chart, and they're filling up those 10 frames. And so I asked him, how close are you guys to reaching your goal? And he said, pretty close. And I said, does it take a lot of hard work? And he said, yep, but I did it. So super exciting. And when the day that they reached that goal, I walked into the classroom and they all just kind of started shouting, we read it, we made our goal, we made our goal. And so then they had a popsicle dance party. And of course, we all went out in the yard and we danced. And you could ask every single one of those kids, why are we dancing right now? And it was because they reached their goal. So just a little something we're working on at Monarch Grove, and I wanted to share that with you. There's plenty of other wonderful things, but this is just one of them. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. It sounds pretty great out there at Monarch Grove. So thank you for sharing that, and let the students know that we were excited to see them.
I will. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Our next item is 7.01 correspondence. And at the time the agenda was posted, we had received no public correspondence. Next is public comment. This is the time of the meeting where people wish to address the board on items not on the agenda, may do so under general public comment. Or if there's something on the agenda you'd like to address and don't wish to wait for that to come forward, you can do that now. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. I know that we have at least one person who wishes to address the board on item 8.03, but that is a superintendent's update and we do not go to the public for that. So we would request that you address the board now. Mrs. Roger has that yellow sheet.
I do, and I hope you'll forgive me if I mispronounce this, but it looks like Rich Nade wanting to speak on measures C and D.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to take the time to comment. My name is Rich Nide. I am a labor representative for the Sheet Metal Workers Local 104. We cover the 49 out of the 58 counties in the state of California. The 3 that I cover, that I represent, are the tri-counties. And basically, I'm here just to give comment in support of a possible project labor agreement or community workforce agreement for your bond measure that was recently passed. 2 of my top priorities as being a representative in my current position is both local hire and ensuring that we are utilizing projects through the district that will be a driving force for apprenticeship. Our apprenticeship is both made up of labor and management representatives. So together we work as a whole to get the best workers to be trained and skilled in the craft that we do. As far as a project labor agreement goes, this is basically a vehicle that we can use as a way to have an even playing field when it comes to not only union contractors, but also non-union contractors on bidding these projects. Couple of statistics I wanted to go over with you just to kind of give you an overall vision on what the unions do when it comes to apprenticeship. There was a study taken in 2019 by the DIR, which is the California Department of International Relations. Their study had computed that 92% of all construction apprentices in California are unionized. The other 8% are non-union. So really, it's the unions who are training our workforce of tomorrow. And I'm very much in support of those, of that training. Also, in addition, wage theft is pretty rampant in the construction industry. So I'm sure a lot of companies do play by the rules, but there are some that don't. And that's why I am very much in support of this PLA. Because again, it does put all contractors on an even playing field. There's compliance, there's checks and balances. And again, I'm just in very support of an agreement
Thank you.
such as that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Deb.
Okay, I also have Joshua Madrano speaking to the same item. I
Yes,
believe.
thank you. Appreciate that. I actually pronounced it right. That's the first time. It depends on where you're from, Madrano or Medrano. So perfect. Appreciate that.
Your time starts now.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Well, Joshua Madrano with the Tri-Counties Building and Construction Trades Council of San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, and Ventura counties. First off, I'd like to congratulate you on all the hard work that it took up until this point in getting your bond measure passed. I know it wasn't an easy lift, Measure C, that was quite some undertaking. So congratulations to be able to secure that. I am here because other trades have either approached you on a one-on-one basis or even here in a group setting. And I am here just to be with them in solidarity and push the MC3 training, which is a multi-craft curriculum. And you just heard Rich speak about the benefits of a PLA. For those of you out there that don't know what a PLA is, or a CWA, a project labor agreement, or a community workforce agreement, that is an agreement between the building trades and whatever entity is at the time building anything. And what it does is it secures local hire. So there is a stigma going around that, oh, well, wait a minute, this is just for union folks. Well, actually, it's not. What we do is we lobby on behalf of labor in general. Doesn't matter if they're union, non-union, we are for the working people. When you have a bond measure of this magnitude, you need those individuals to help you implement that bond measure. Well, we consider ourselves skilled and trained. And with skilled and trained labor, we provide that local labor hire to meet certain criteria. The neighbors to the south in Santa Barbara County, that level is at 5 million threshold, with local hire being around 55%. That means that 55% of that workforce will be represented by local hire of people that actually live here in San Luis Obispo County. Okay, so what are we trying to do? We're trying to keep people here, home, able to work, able to be close to their families, able to provide those opportunities for high school students that, let's face it, it's not always a 4-year college that they go to. The trades are here as a pathway to a livable wage where they can live here, work here, learn here, and be able to build something that they have a lot of pride in back in their community. So when you hear project labor agreements and community workforce agreements, remember, you are looking at your community, at that labor force that already exists, and we are here to help you steward that into the next generation by providing training for youth, at risk, adult ed, veterans, women, LGBTQ. We represent the people of labor. So we are here to reintroduce ourselves to all of you and let you know that we are here to help however we can. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Mr. Madrano, you made reference to something that I wrote down as MC3 training. I'm not allowed to engage in any discourse with you during public comment, but I wonder if you could provide in some written form what MC3 training is to the board.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. So I'll
Thank
be
you.
reaching out to all of you with that information. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board under general public comment? Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our superintendent's updates. And first is business and budget update. Mr. Pinkerton.
Yeah, just a few quick updates on the business end for this meeting. And the first one is there's a electric charging seminar Thursday night at 5:30 at the Octagon Barn. And so Mr. Bonin and myself will be attending on behalf of the district. So kind of a local group that's really trying to spread charging stations around to schools, businesses, those types of things. So Chris Bonin and I are going to gather information Thursday night, and I'll be sharing that with the board. And I believe it's the Octagon Barn. Yeah. So yeah, as you know, there's new requirements in terms of solar charging stations, those types of things that are coming on board. And as we begin to do construction on our sites, those are some of the things we may have to implement by state law. So again, I'll be, kind of letting the board know as we learn more on that front. I'm also and have been meeting with the childcare agencies. So really 3 groups: the YMCA, City of San Luis Obispo, City of Morro Bay. And you're going to hear tonight a little bit about our ELOPE program and funding. And so it kind of ties in because we have a great, relationship with those groups, work hard, with them to make sure that we have that relationship and we continue it as we look to expand those programs for our kids. And again, I'll talk more about that a little bit later in the meeting with that as well. And then I do know that we have a few years ago, the board put some money aside for a childcare study in the county, along with County San Luis Obispo, City of San Luis Obispo, ourselves. And there's a follow-up meeting coming up. I believe Dr. Prater and myself will be attending next month on March 1st at 9:30. So kind of learn, where are they at? What are the next steps potentially? And so we'll share that information with the board as well as we learn more and kind of see where they're at this point with that study. Again, the first phase of that study that we actually had somebody come back and talk to the board was basically outlining, yes, it's an issue. It's a problem for working folks. It's something that's there. And now it's, okay, now what are we going to do about it? Right. So interested in finding more about the different agencies, what they have to offer. And again, if there's ways that we can help our parents and staff, we look forward to participating in those discussions.
Thank you. Next is educational services update, Mrs. Frost.
Yes, thank you. Just a couple of short updates this week. Our elementary trimester ends next Friday, so our elementary teachers are involved in this assessments with their students, working on report cards. They do have a teacher workday coming up on March 6th, and then we have our spring parent-teacher conferences the week of March 14th through 17th, so half days for our elementary campuses. Last time we were together, I talked to you about some CTE programs that we're offering for Laguna Middle School kids at SLO High School. Those continue. I talked to you about automotive, robotics, graphic design, photography. So 3 weeks in and the dust has settled a little bit. We have 70 kids participating, which I think is a really impressive number. So kudos to the entire team that put that program together for our kids. And then finally, this Thursday's DLAC Fiesta has been postponed. So very, very popular event on Thursday night. Very important as well for our schools, our EL community. It is going to be rescheduled. Our coordinator is unexpectedly out, but we are looking for dates and we'll let the board and the public know.
Thank you. And it is a fun event. So next is measures C and D update.
Yeah, so a few things on the docket. One, we have our next CBOC meeting, so our Citizens Bond Oversight Committee for Measure D will be happening on March 13th. That meeting will be at Morro Bay High School. We'll be going through the new theater, food service area, multi-purpose room, drama room, choir room. And so we'll kind of walk the CBOC around. We'll be reviewing the budgets with Measure D as we kind of completion of projects, finishing those budgets, and bring everybody on board with that. And then the following CBOC meeting will be at San Luis Obispo High School to kind of do the same. So, but this next one again, March 13th, as we wind down Measure D. Measure C, we had our first bond sale last week. And so $90 million will be coming to the school district that will be set aside for construction. So, I'm reminded, and sometimes I have to set back, at times, just like how lucky we are as a school district that the voters entrusted us with these funds, right? So you'll get these issues and problems that pop up, things that happen, we're fighting over stuff and what's going on. And then sometimes you have to just set back and like, this is a good problem to have. right? So yeah, it's a lot of work. It's going to take a lot that goes into it, but we're excited about what it's going to do for our kids. And so just a positive start with that. And so we are accepting CBOC applications for that bond oversight committee. And so I believe that closes on February 28th. And we'll be working for, kind of a new group to oversee those funds and where we head. And then lastly, Chris Bonin and myself and the team will be putting together the beginning of the priority discussion for the board. So looking at projects and budgets and overarching, kind of where we're at as we begin with Measure C, because we're going to have architects hopefully on board next month. And then we really need to start making some decisions about projects and what we're going to do and how the delivery method we're going to use so that we can begin that, right? Because it takes time, 6 months of planning, 6 months of DSA, meeting with staffs, outlining, kind of the needs of the school. So there's just a lot that goes into it. And as we learned with Measure D, even starting quickly, it can take up to 2 years before you have a shovel in the ground, right? So it's really important that we begin that priority discussion with the board. And I look forward to doing that very soon.
Hey, Mr. Pinkerton.
I've got Mr. Underwood.
Oh,
When you go ahead.
I just wanted to make clear, I guess, for the public, that when we have a bond sale and we have $90 million coming to us, that money is designated for Measure C.
Yes.
It's not commingled in any way with district funds, general fund monies. In advance of being spent, at least for the last bond, I assume it's the same, that money is kept in the county treasury.
Yes.
Which is the safest, although it's not as high yield, but it is the safest vehicle for
Yes.
putting that money.
All those things are true. Absolutely. So yeah, we
thank
have a
you.
separate fund outside the general fund specifically for bond funds. Again, we have a citizens bond oversight committee that oversees every expenditure that, the money, and we also do annual audits, both performance audit and financial audits, right? So all of those things to ensure the dollars are spent as the taxpayers outlined in the ballot measure.
Okay. Because, sometimes people make comments and I don't understand them. Well, I probably should not go on next door, but
Yes.
people said, well, where is the Measure D money? Well, hey, we spent it on Measure D. Look at the high schools, look at the
You
multipurpose.
can go on our
relationships
board
piece,
agendas
look at-
right now and find budgets that outline every penny that was Measure D funded.
So Measure D funds were spent on Measure
Yep.
D projects according to the bond language, and Measure C funds will be spent in the same way.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Unger.
I believe that Morro Bay High School, the multipurpose room / theater
Theater.
and cafe should be done soon. Any ideas when we're going to be able to open that? Because it's pretty awesome.
We actually have
what
our
up.
next board meeting is scheduled to be there. So you'll be
Okay.
happy to know that. And I believe they're in the works right now. They're waiting for some curtains to come in. They wanted to kind of do a grand opening for music and band and choir and everybody together, as well as have the food service part. So I think as soon as those curtains come in, they have something scheduled. I actually had one of the students from the drama group reach out to me and ask me about it. So, very soon,
Great.
very
Thank you.
soon.
Gonna ask a kind of a Maryland question here. So I just want to be clear that everybody understands. I know I heard you say it, but everybody understands. There's not a single approved drawing. There's not a single approved contractor. This is just, we've sold the first of the money, but everything's still going to come to the board as representatives of the public before.
Yes,
I know. I just thought I'd repeat it.
yes.
Thanks.
So really next steps are selecting architects for each of the school sites. And when I say Measure C, again, there is some things that have been decided and the voters decided that it should be spent on the elementary sites, the middle schools, and Pacific Beach High School, right? Those are the priority projects that we outlined to the voters when we went forward. And so that will be the focus of this bond measure and expenditures. But yes, everything comes to the board for approval.
Thank you. All right, next is a discussion item on curriculum adoption updates.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. Leslie and Chelsea will tee up, or Jane and Chelsea will tee up the presentation and share it with you on Zoom, but I apologize for having to do this presentation from home. But I'm here tonight with Leslie O'Connor, the Director of Secondary Learning and Achievement, along with Jane Hawley and Chelsea Smiley, who are our curriculum TOSAs and integral to all the work that's happening in instructional services. There's been a lot going on in instructional services. So Dr. Prater asked if we could share with the board an update on that process, and we will do so now. Perfect, right there. So an IMAP, or an Instructional Materials Advisory Panel, is a process outlined by the state of California that we must go through for all official adoptions of core instructional materials, kindergarten through 8th grade. It's not required for high school level, but it's such a good process that we use it at the high school level anyway. You can see the steps that are outlined here on the slide, but we put together a committee that's largely made up of teachers. We also have, of course, parents, administrators, other staff that are on those committees as well. We always start with a review of the framework and the standards because we want to make sure that everything is connected to the standards and the frameworks outlined by the state. We have a rubric that we use to evaluate all materials, and we establish what that criteria will be to evaluate the materials, making sure that they have all the elements that we think are important for student learning. And then, of course, we take a look at student data, and we want to make sure that the curriculum is strong in the areas that we need help with in terms of improving the data. But then we identify programs to adopt, train teachers on how to use those adopted or those pilot materials rather. And then they go through piloting, which can take anywhere from 3 months if it's just one item that needs to be piloted, or up to 6 or 8 months if it's several different options. And then there's a process where we get public feedback and from parents and the community. Those are sent out electronically, as well as we have physical copies available at school sites and in instructional services. And then finally, we bring the final decision, the recommendation to the board for curriculum that should be adopted. Thank you. In elementary, the core curriculum that we're looking at right now is Spanish language arts at our 2 dual immersion programs. History and social studies, which last was adopted in 2007. So that's very old curriculum. And then we're beginning the process of looking at English language arts, though that will take several years. We also, because there's been a lot of talk out there about the need for students to have phonics and phonemic awareness and also handwriting post-COVID, we have some supplemental programs that we've been using in those areas as well. And then, as I mentioned before, Chelsea and Jane have done a tremendous job in instructional services to support this work. There's a lot that goes into ordering, piloting materials, getting the group together, leading the workshops, that kind of thing. So Chelsea will walk us through the big 3 elementary core things that are happening now.
Before we do that, Mr. Mayfield, I know it's hard for you to see since you're on Zoom, but the board, there are a couple of trustees with questions. So if you could,
Sure, please.
Mr. Buckman and Mr. Unger.
Hey, Rick, I hope you're feeling better soon. Just a quick question. When I look at this and we talk about Spanish language arts from 2007, is it up to the district to decide when we're going to, we're going to look at everything every 10 years, or gosh, we feel like we're going to do this, or is there another process?
The California Department of Education actually publishes kind of a cycle of when materials should be adopted. There hasn't been any great history, social studies at the elementary level out there, and so we put it off. But teachers are very enthusiastic about now finally getting to the place where we're ready to adopt curriculum.
Thank you.
Rick, can you talk a little bit more with me about the supplemental instructional materials and how that fits in to the overall, I would say, I'm assuming English language arts curriculum. So
yes.
It looks to, so what I think you're telling me is that we'll do a broad review of our English language arts curriculum, but in the meantime, we need to be looking at phonics, phonemic awareness, those things that I think people are now calling the science of reading. Is that true?
Exactly. Those are elements of the science of reading. So you're spot on, Mr. Unger. Our curriculum of the reading and writing units of study, we need some supplemental materials in terms of phonics. K2, we use the phonics units of study, which is also Teachers College created. But phonemic awareness, we use a different company. And for handwriting, we use Handwriting Without Tears. And, you know, handwriting, it's interesting. A lot of the special education teachers and specialists came to us and said, hey, post-COVID, we're really seeing kids struggle with fine motor abilities and handwriting in particular. And so we've had a focus on that. And so they're not considered core materials, though certainly they're elements of a core language arts adoption.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Smiley.
Okay, so I'm going to take you on some trips, some road trips here. You're going to see a few of them. So they are different. We're going to start with the elementary Spanish language arts. And we're in the process. We're right in smack in the middle. This is sort of an accelerated process this year because we came back from COVID seeing the numbers that we did with our data, right? And knew that the curriculum that we have, while we've loved it and done a ton of work with it, it didn't intend to teach kids how to read and write in Spanish. So it felt very necessary that we go look for a program that did intend and was designed to teach kids to read and write in Spanish. What we have is all translated, and teachers are certainly teaching kids to read and write in Spanish, but the program didn't set out to do that. Does that make sense?
My understanding is it was sort of homegrown. Is that true?
Yeah.
Well,
a lot of it was translated by the company, but a lot of work went in from our own teachers too. Rick, did you want to add to that?
just the amount of work is really amazing what teachers have done to adapt the curriculum and make it productive for their classrooms. But, you know, there are a lot of issues with that when a curriculum isn't written in a specific language. And so the Spanish language arts curriculums that we're looking at are excellent and have all of the elements that a teacher will need to teach language arts. And it'll certainly be a lot easier for new teachers to come in and pick up the curriculum with a little bit of training and do a quality job of teaching it.
So we assembled, I'm gonna talk you through the roadmap here. We assembled a pilot team, created a rubric together of what we thought was super important to look for in a curriculum, invited all that were viable to come and present to us, and chose 2 to pilot. And so in August saw the first pilot, the first curriculum presenter came and shared with us about their curriculum, how to use it. And the implementation happened in September and October. However, teachers needed to fit it in for their timeline. And then we came back in January for the second pilot. We reflected on the first one, and then teachers are currently trying out the second pilot. And then at the end of March, after report cards and after conference week, teachers will come back together and reflect on the second pilot and hopefully resoundingly choose one that they love and are ready to move forward. And once they do that, we will share that information with the sites and put the materials out for public review and be coming to you in May for a board recommendation.
Mr. Buckland.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a general one before we go on the rest of the roadmap.
Sure.
So I know I get road sick. As I look at this is a question I have had before and I haven't really asked, and that's, so you looked at 4 programs. My guess is there's probably 20 out there that are possible.
Good question.
Okay, so how do we get to the 4?
Yeah.
And then I'll ask my next question.
So I'm going to try not to go too deep in the weeds for you.
I appreciate it.
The California State Education Department has a list of approved curriculums.
Right.
And this is called a type 3. A type 3 curriculum or program intentionally teaches in a different language than English. And so because of that specificity, there are fewer available than there are in English. So there aren't actually that many out there. We did take a look at one that a teacher found that wasn't on that list. And so met with the curriculum publisher and decided not to go with it, but we went with all the things that we could find. So we threw it all out there.
And so I hear that, and then this is a special type 3, but on the elementary history social studies, we only looked at 3 programs. And I'm guessing there were more of those. So just how is that initial choice
Sure.
being made?
So we started again with the CDE recommended, that's where we began. And then looked out to see if there was anything else, Googling, going to different sites, checking with different districts, crowdsourcing on different social media, not next door, but others. So, you know, we got a lot of recommendations and followed up on all of them.
Okay. And then and if I can, go ahead and I'll.
Yeah, Mr. Banfield had a question.
Please. No. I promise to be.
I had a question because I looked at the presentation, and in the process of adoption, it appears that the public or the community and families
Yeah.
get to review the material. How is that facilitated?
So do you remember, when we did this with Bridges and Teachers College, do you remember how we did that? We sent the materials to school sites, and we had a form, paper and Google form. I'm imagining in this era, we're going to have a QR code with some really specific questions for people to look at and reflect. It will be a little different than the ones that we will look at as teachers, because, well, our rubric is 33 questions long, and that's probably too detailed, but there were a few questions to guide people to look through the material so that they could make some observations and judgments based on that.
And we'll also send links out, Mr. Banfield, so that parents can review materials online as well. So we want to make it accessible. We want to get people's input.
Will families and community and the public have access to the state
Oh, of course.
guidelines, the state
Recommendations?
curriculum as stated by the State Board
Absolutely,
of
yeah.
Education?
Sure.
So they'll have that to be able then to review the proposed adopted materials?
So the state puts out something that's quite complex, and certainly people are welcome to go look through that. What we have done in the past is to simplify it a little bit, to give some pretty guided things to look for. Parents don't always know what to look for in curriculum unless you're a teacher, right? You wouldn't look, for example, is it teacher friendly, right? That wouldn't be something a parent would necessarily be able to discern.
That's right.
So we would put together some questions that would be specific for them.
Well, one more question.
Okay.
In these proposed adoption materials, was the process to let staff members at large at the different campuses have a go at looking at them, and what's that process look like now?
That's a great question, Mr. Branfield. We, especially for the English language arts adoption, we're having people who are on the panels take back a series of slides to present to staff at staff meetings. And then we'll even do an activity where everybody has a chance to look at some of the process and some of the activities that we've done and give their input into the materials, with the goal of everybody having a voice in what materials they'll be using. I think Chelsea mentioned earlier, you hope that we'll get a robust recommendation from the group. It's really difficult when you get a group that's 55-45 for two different curriculums. And it's always nice when one really stands out as the way to go. But people will have an opportunity to give input.
Does that answer your question?
I have one more.
Okay, and then we'll go back to Mr.
Yeah,
Buckley.
and I'm sorry.
It's
Is there
okay.
ever, is
Oh,
it
okay.
ever appropriate for members of the board to look at those materials?
Well, of course.
Totally.
We brought, I remember when Jane brought into literature, we brought those materials to the board for the secondary adoption, and people looked through them and had questions, right? And observations and things they wanted to share. So
we're given a chance.
Board members are also welcome to drop by any of our meetings with teachers in any of the adoptions and just sit in and watch the process, of course.
Okay, that's all.
okay,
Thank you.
you ready for the next road?
I think we are.
Okay, so the elementary history, social science roadmap. Just like Mr. Mayfield said, the last time we adopted elementary history, social science was 2007. The history framework, which is the lens through which you look at standards and often the impetus for new curriculum to be created, was published in 2017, I believe. And at that time, people from our district went to look at the materials that were set out based upon that framework revision and didn't see anything that was inspiring. So we sort of sat on it, and at this point, our curriculum is so old. There's no technology that is available with it. There's no website. There's some DVDs. Most of them are lost, but we don't even have like machines that we could play them on if we wanted to. So it was time. And we went out, and we did some crowdsourcing to find out what was out there, in addition to what the state had as from the adopted list. And luckily, a few things from the adopted list were things that our teachers wanted to take a look at. So we had that same process that we talked about with Spanish language arts. We had the pilot team came together. We created a rubric that we agreed upon with guidance from the state. Took a look at the 3 programs because there weren't very many actually for history, social science. It's interesting, and selected 2 to pilot. And we had the first pilot in October, and teachers got to try out those materials. Then we came back together in January and had the second pilot and reflected and did some great grade level planning across the district. And they're trying things out in their classrooms right now. Hopefully, again, a resounding agreement, and we will share that and share all of the materials with the community and come to you with a recommendation.
So Mr. Banfield got close, but what happens if we get to the point where God, staff has done a year's worth of work, tons of research, done everything they can, and it gets to public review, and for some reason there's discord, and people are not happy. So I guess my question is, would it be of any value to involve some of the public sooner?
They're involved in the process. We have members of the public who are part of these committees. And it's not a predominant number. The state, I'm not sure what the word is, but the state recommends that the majority of people on the committee be teachers. And that's certainly the case on our committees. But we do have parents who are a part of the committee as well.
Thanks.
Mrs. Roger.
Yeah, many years ago, I was asked to be a parent representative to a curriculum adoption committee. And I would tell you that I felt very lost. I'm not a teacher. I didn't know what I was looking for. What would make one adoption potential adoption be preferable to another. And so I just ended up having to look at it with an eye to, is this engaging? If I were a child, would I find the way this is presented more engaging than the way the other is presented? Because that was really all I could, my only way to participate. So I don't know about public input early on. It's it's a nice idea, but really it's the footwags in the trenches that are going to be making these decisions. They're going to be putting this stuff forward for students.
I appreciate that. The engagement piece is really critical. So I'm sure your input was important, more so than you felt.
Thank you.
Yeah. You ready? All right, last road. This one is longer than it appears. Okay, so this covers 2 years. So the elementary reading committee, we're taking the IMAP process and stretching it out over 2 years. Kind of what Marilyn was speaking of, Mrs. Rogers, excuse me. We wanted to create that team and really build that common background together, including the parents. I just met with some parent representatives this morning to go over that, all of the information again, to make sure that they were on the same page and had all their questions answered in terms of that background. So we did a lot of work around the science of reading that Mr. Unger referenced, and so we are standing in the same place because reading is such a fundamental part of what we do in elementary school, right? So that's what we did in January. We're going to do more of that background work in March. We're going to bring some curriculums forward based upon the rubric that we're going to create together, and with the whole team, choose 2 again, hoping. And then we go right to fall 2023 to spring 2024. So we're jumping to next year on this road. And we'll do the process that you saw on the former 2 slides, right? Where we get to have the presentations, we get to have time to try it out in classrooms, and give our feedback. And hopefully, again, the ending is the same. There's a robust agreement. Everybody's happy. We share our information with the public and we bring to you a recommendation. Any questions?
Doesn't look like it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Right.
Oh, yes. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Chelsea. You'll notice on the last slide, it said K-5 reading. And so 6th grade, of course, we have split. The coast is at the middle schools, and in town, 6th grade is at the elementary schools. We began the secondary language arts adoption, which you approved last year, about 4 years ago. And then, of course, it was interrupted by COVID, and then we had to kind of wait before we restarted the process. But when we began the grades 6 through 12 adoption, 6th grade in town was just getting started on reading and writing units of study. And it wasn't in our thought process at that time to have them go with a curriculum that was the same as the middle and high schools. But as you know, the standards are written that way, K-5, and then 6, 12. Our math adoption, for example, is 6, 12. Reading is, K-5 or 6 within the town. So we met with our grade 6 in-town elementary teachers in January, and we discussed like what are logical next steps. And the group was right along with us. We presented, Jane Hawley did a great presentation on this curriculum. It's been very well received by the secondary schools. Middle school teachers are reporting heightened student engagement. It's more diverse characters, and it's been very well received, and teachers are really liking all the elements of the curriculum to date. So we talked to the 6th grade town teachers about just going ahead and using the Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Into Literature series like the rest of the 6th grade on the coast and the middle schools. And they were all in agreement that this makes the most sense. So we will purchase licenses to get them started now in the spring, and then they'll have full implementation in fall of next year on Into Literature and be in line with 6 through 11 for language arts.
Mr. Buckman?
Yeah, so Rick, this is my favorite question. I ask it almost every meeting. So we have kids that have started, they've been doing whatever in 5th, 3rd grade, they were doing a different kind of study. And yet we often will say we're going to compare kids so that we or compare achievements so we can know how well we're doing as a district. We just heard about a great program for doing that. And so now we're not only are we changing the cohort, we're also changing the actual program that we're using to teach. So do we lose the ability to track our success?
I don't think so. I think a lot of the assessments do change. There's no question about that. They will fluctuate with the curriculum that you have, but the skills and the standards are still the same. teachers are responsible for teaching the standards, and the curriculum is there as a support to teachers to help them to do that. So just like we do bridges in math K-5, and then we do CPM in grade 6, it'll be the same story here. And we'll do K-5 one adoption, and then 6-11 will be a separate adoption. And I think we'll still be able to, analyze how kids are reading with similar measures over time.
Thank you.
Mr. Unger?
So I'm seeing that the graphic up there shows Intro to Literature Florida. I hope that we have Intro to Literature.
Chelsea, I'm sure it's, into literature is, I don't know that it's state specific, but definitely will not be Florida version.
Yeah.
All right, thank you for having me here today. I'm Jane Hawley. I'm the secondary curriculum TOSA. This is my second year in the position. So I saw those of you who were on the board last year for what I think is a great achievement is to get our secondary ELA adoption completed, which Chelsea actually helped shepherd through the pandemic. So I'd like to thank her publicly because that was a challenge. The into literature adoption and implementation is going really well. English 6th grade at Los Osos Middle School, it was adopted there. And then at our both middle schools and high schools for English 7, 8, both on level and advanced, and then English 9 on level and honors, as well as 10. And then also for English 11 college prep, that's where we begin to branch off into AP. So that's why it stops there. And we've had lots of teacher feedback. I think Rick spoke to this, that there's so much more student engagement with this curriculum than what we'd had before. There's a lot of diversity, not only of the characters, but the authors themselves. It's global in its approach, and I think really built for 21st century learners. Teachers have responded well. They are able to work closely together on their curriculum and their assessments with this common curriculum adoption. And then they've had support throughout this year, both training with the publisher, with me, getting to work with each other during release days to kind of continue developing and fleshing out their scope and sequence, and then ongoing support throughout the end of this year. And of course, beyond, curriculum is not just a book, it's like a living entity in the classrooms. And so these are materials that help foster really amazing conversations about big ideas between students and teachers, but it's really that interaction in the classroom that is what brings it all alive. So.
Mr. Unger?
And this may be a question actually for Mr. Bloom. Los Osos Middle School does a humanities block for English language arts and social sciences. How do we coordinate those two things when we're looking at this kind of curriculum and curriculum implementation?
If you'd like. Yeah. Okay. So of course, LOMS has an amazing humanities department. Those teachers really pride themselves on being able to teach both English and social studies. And so they've created a curriculum in which they're using into literature as well as their supplementary novels. For example, I believe in the 8th grade, the focus is on US history, and they teach a novel called Chains by Laurie Halse Anderson. That's about the Revolutionary War. So there are things that they do to be able to use this English curriculum, teaching the English standards, while also using the National Geographic's and Cengage social studies curriculum that they implement into the class as well. So they have a more kind of integrated approach to teaching the humanities. Carl, did I get all of that? Okay. Alrighty. Okay.
So I have the next slide, and it's just an opportunity to review and to bring board up to speed, obviously with some new board members, and also thinking back and think back to Kim McGrath days, Tristan days, lots and lots of wonderful people that went before us. But it's just a good reminder of the pilots we've had and the adoptions that we've undergone in our district over the last 5 to 7 years. And you can see as we progress, and we've added some amazing curriculums available to our students, but process is being key, and transparency and bringing everybody along in that conversation. As we look at what we're doing in 22-23, I have the fun job of talking about physics at the secondary level, because I'm sure you've got lots and lots of questions for me around physics. And I can't wait to answer those questions. But as you can see, Jane has done a fantastic job working with our physics teachers at our high schools. When we look back at next generation science standards, so when you see that NGSS, we're looking at our next generation science standards. Trivia, when was next generation science standards brought to our attention, and when we start talking about NGSS was 2013. So think about that. That's like 10 years ago already, which really time flies when you think about it, because those conversations and all about NGSS was about sequencing of science courses. If you remember that in high school, especially, the conversation centered around, should we start with biology? Should we move to chemistry? Where would physics fall? We had conversations about a 3-year science graduation requirement, if you remember and recall way back in the day. Then we started talking about in 2016, and then finally in 2018 with science frameworks. And now we're in 2023, and we've had the opportunity to update our curriculums, and now we're looking at physics. So we've got 2 publishers that Jane's been working with our content experts on. The students are working through. And as you can see, we're at that point in mid-March, we'll have a teacher release day to work with Jane and the team to give feedback around. And then Mr. Banfield, you mentioned the community review piece. And as Mr. Mayfield said, we'll have the community able to weigh in whether they want to look at the materials here at the district office, at the school sites, Morro Bay and San Luis High. And this is where technology has gone. We have the ability to supply electronic links to parents so they can look at and review in the comfort of their own home. And we're very blessed to have very articulate, engaged parents in our community, whether it be physics or another secondary subject, because they do look at these things. And we're excited about the physics pilot currently going on in our 2 high schools. Okay.
All right. So what's amazing about secondary is we have so many different subjects that we cover. So I'm going to talk about health and then AP chemistry. We're currently in our high school health pilot right now with our health teachers from the high schools. And we want these materials to be in alignment with the current California guidelines for health education, which we've linked for you in the public here today. Our health teachers are currently in the process of piloting both Glencoe Health and Essential Health Skills. These are both curricula that were updated this last year. So we're really looking at the most updated version of health curricula. And that's so important because health changes constantly. I think the last adoption that we did, vaping didn't exist and now it does. So we have to be able to update what we're teaching in our health courses to be responsive to the world around our students. A distinction that I have here is the board has already adopted the sexual health component of our health education, both for middle and high school. That's Positive Prevention Plus. So that is separate from these 2 curricula. Generally, what publishers do is they have the curricula and then they have a California sexual health add-on. We're not looking at those because we already have Positive Prevention Plus. So this would just be adopting for the rest of the content of the health courses. And we're sort of in the middle of our pilot now. We'll have another teacher release day to discuss the results of the pilot with the teachers. We'll go on community or public review, and also you'll be able to review all of that content, and then we'll make a recommendation to the board for adoption. The next pilot is one that we're in the process of just starting right now. That'll go through the end of next school year. That's AP chemistry. And we really wanted to bring the materials into alignment with the College Board's updated AP chemistry course and exam. At our high schools, our students take chemistry first, and then they elect to take AP chemistry as an upper level science elective. So these students are very motivated in their sciences. And we're looking at these two chemistry programs. Of course, they're both called chemistry. So we identified them by the author. And we will continue to have some time with teachers collaborating with each other at the end of this year to prepare for their pilot, get trained by publishers, and then next year they'll actually be piloting these programs in their classes and discuss the results of the pilot and bring it to you in spring 2024. So, okay.
Any additional questions for the team? Mr. Banfield.
Going back one slide to the health pilot. I looked at this earlier today, and the little link to the California guidelines for health education. I think that should be part of what the community looks at when they're doing the review. Now, the link comes up to this frequently asked questions, and they give matter-of-fact answers to several questions that I think are really important. And I think the community, when they're reviewing this, when they're reviewing the health curriculum, they should also be introduced to, for example, this document, frequently asked questions about, and the California Healthy Youth Act and all of that. I think that would be real important.
I agree, and we'll make sure to include that. We'll also include any legal requirements about health for state law. And then we can link to, Chelsea had mentioned, the state releases a framework for each subject. There's also one for health as well as the health standards. So we can link to those as well. But the FAQ is really that easily digestible public document.
Right. In those questions, they'll say, are parents allowed to have their student opt out of this or this or this? And I think it'd be really good for the community at large to know and be aware of that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. I'd like to go to the public and see if anyone from the public wishes to comment on this item. Seeing none, we'll come back to the board. Mrs. Roger.
Thank you. I just wanted to make one comment regarding something that Ms. Hawley said when she said, and I think this is a direct quote, curriculum is a living thing. And that was so encouraging to hear, because I think that good teachers armed with good curriculum can really engage students and make their learning enjoyable, and just they can do so much if they have that approach that this is a living, changing thing. And so I just want to tell you, I really appreciate that you said that and it spoke to me.
And like Mr. Banfield, I went to the FAQ page on the California Guidelines for Health Education, and it was very interesting and informative. So I was glad I did that, and thank you for posting that link. All right. Any other questions or comments? Thank you so much. This was really, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you all.
All right. We will move into item 9.02, middle school continuous improvement efforts. And this again is a discussion item.
And just going back to the last point about the link, we had that conversation because we felt that transparency was so important to be able to make sure that everybody has a full understanding what really is out there. And the better educated means we can answer all those questions. Well, we're delighted to have two of our two middle school principals joining me this evening, Mr. Bloom and Mr. Meinert, as we're going to talk about our update on our Schools to Watch progress. A little bit of background for board as we start to think about the Schools to Watch program. Why Schools to Watch? I want to remind us that our school board's strategic direction 21-25 talks about middle school reform and linking it specifically to the comprehensive program that is Schools to Watch. Then the question is, well, what is Schools to Watch? And Schools to Watch is a nationally recognized program, over 600 schools participating, 17 states, and it's the best of the best. The most important thing that I would point out with regard to the Schools to Watch is the process. It's not necessarily about the award, although awards are wonderful. And I will tell you that Los Osos Middle School is a nationally recognized twice recipient of Schools to Watch under Mr. Bloom's leadership. But it's really, really important to understand the process, because middle school is such a pivotal time for young people. That opportunity to explore and to grow, but it's also a unique time for us as educators to understand their developmental process. But again, process is key, and bringing in lots and lots of voices into the conversation, staff voice, community voice, student voice, members of our board, our cabinet, all to lean into our middle schools to make sure that they are excellent for our students. As we look at the metric of excellence, we're obviously talking about that self-review. We're bringing it together with regard to our staff, that staff reflection. And Mr. Bloom and Mr. Meinert will talk at length about that staff reflection piece. We're talking about the community input. We have to make sure that we're always working alongside our community. The third part of that is the site observation, where we bring in a team of experts and they look at and they validate the work of our staff and the work of our community in this process. And what do we do in this process? We're looking at our culture. We're looking at our systems and structures. We're really analyzing instruction and a keen eye on rigor. And how do we define rigor? And we think back about the work we're doing with Dr. McDowell around clarity. We think about the work that we're doing with our teachers in our middle schools to make sure that all means all. It's a process, and we want to make sure that we're really leaning into this. And finally, we have to remember there's an actual rubric that guides us through this conversation. And when we look at this rubric, that rubric is key to the conversations taking place with staff. So again, you'll hear from Mr. Bloom and Mr. Meinert about how they are walking the staff through, how they work with students, whether it be in our Superintendent Senate, and how we work with our parents as we look through each of these domains and to start to analyze and critique where we're at and how we can build and improve, whether that be through our academic excellence, our developmental responsiveness, because of the unique age of kids. When we look at our social equity, when we talk about our work as a district with regard to equity and process, and when we start to talk about our structure and purpose. Again, that self-reflection is so, so important. And again, Mr. Bloom, Mr. Meinert are going to update you on the work that they've been doing with their staff. Any questions to date?
All right. Hello, everybody. So I get to start here, and I'm going to talk a little bit. This is not our first rodeo at Loams, which is awesome. But the way the process has worked in both of the previous cycles and the way we're going about it again this year is we're working with our staff to take a look at the 4 domains, and we start listing all the things we do, and we put them down on a big list, and we have our evidence from previous Schools to Watch processes. And sometimes we might cross out something that has gone by the wayside that we've added or improved, or it just doesn't happen anymore, usually replaced by something better. So we'll go through this process in the months of March and April. Again, we're going to reflect on those changes. We're going to use these staff meetings and ACT time to have these conversations with our staff. And by the end of the school year, we'll have ourselves with our whole staff with a comprehensive understanding of what we're doing at Loams. Because believe it or not, even though we're a school of 540 with about 31 full-time staff members, there are still people that do things and some people are unaware. And this is really a great way for everybody to kind of come together and do this process. So when we talk about getting the additional inputs, we'll be working with our school site council, our PTSAs, and we'll create a survey around a couple of the questions that really reach out and ask, basically get a parent input on what's happening at Loams. We're going to talk with our superintendent senate, and we'll be working with them to get their feedback on the same rubric. And as we take the senators' goals, they're in the process of creating those and refining those right now. They have a superintendent senate meeting tomorrow. And we look at that, we look at our youth truth data, and you'll notice this nexus happens with the schools to watch domains, the superintendent senate goals, the youth truth data, and it really starts to paint a picture of how the school's doing. And I don't think that anything, everything kind of, like I said, goes to a common point. So as we go through this process with our staff, again, this is an important piece that will help us frame our goals for next year. Let me give you an example real quick. One of the things that staff ranked themselves lower in, and granted, we did this in fall of 20. So we're in COVID on Zoom trying to self-evaluate. And you're trying to remember back 3 years from 2018, the last time we did it. So we had 2 wonderful years before COVID, and then COVID hits, and we're trying to remember anything from the past, but we're living very much in the present, right? So it was hard. And we went through these meetings and we came up and we realized that staff felt they needed more targeted professional development. They needed more time to attack and do the work. And in the process of the past 2 years, we've had McDowell, we've had targeted staff development. We have spent time and given specific department time to work on different components of things McDowell's been working on us with. So we look at that and we say, oh, we were able to focus just on McDowell because that has been our district focus. So that's one way that a goal or a self-rating leads to a goal and leads to input to Mr. O'Connor and the secondary team. And we come up with this focus on McDowell and not too much else. So that's our process at Loams. We'll be submitting the application. It's due mid-September, but our application will be ready to go by summer. Any questions?
You've done an amazing job. And so you've done an absolutely
The
amazing
staff.
job.
Let me tell you, it's them. They're amazing.
Okay. Your staff did an amazing job and you didn't do anything. But this is really egotistical on my part, I guess, but I was working in Sacramento with the state in West Ed, and they put together the California Healthy Kids Survey. And at the time I thought it was great. I still think it's great. And I'm just, every once in a while, I just wonder whether the health of the kids is valuable in this kind of assessment.
We absolutely look at that data also. That's part of, it isn't as frequent as Youth Truth. It's every 2 years. But we do look at that data because you'll notice there's questions in Youth Truth that are very similar to California Healthy Kids.
Yep.
And our kids are saying the same things.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
My understanding is parents tend to sometimes participate more, at least for the time being, with California Healthy Kids. And I guess that's the second part of this question is how do we improve parental participation? Because the students seem to be doing great.
Well, that is a huge challenge. And I can just tell you that we had really great parent participation in our surveys this year. We have flipped our ELAC meetings into listening sessions rather than prescriptive messages to parents. That has seemed to have been a super positive, and we are getting over half of our ELAC families attending meetings, which is amazing. So it's the age-old question. I mean, we are still seeing effects of COVID and stressors and needs reaching out to families like never before. And, we're working hard to build our families into our school community. Sure.
All right. It's fun to follow after them because this school has already been doing this for a few years. And we actually at Laguna are just jumping into this wonderful process. And I actually mentioned this a few weeks ago when I was with you, that this is a process and each person behind me has said that. And yet I want to emphasize for me and for our school side, it's more about the opportunity to reflect, to look at the things we're doing and doing well and celebrate those things. And then also look at the things that we're seeing that we could improve on, and then look to make goals and pursue those things. So I'll share with you a little bit of the details of what we've been doing so far this year regarding schools to watch at Laguna Middle School. So we are in process right now this year of really digging deep in our reflection. And so you can see in the second, third, and fourth bullet points, the months that we jumped in and looked at each of the first 3 domains of academic excellence in October, developmental responsiveness in November, and then social equity in February. And then we're scheduled next month to jump in and look at organizational structures and processes. Again, these are our reflective times with our staff. We've actually modeled it after what Los Osos Middle School found to be most effective for their team. And so we're doing a lot of what they're doing around really digging deep with our teachers, having them write down ideas on poster boards and go around and add things to those. And then at the end, each person individually go through and do a self-ranking just so we have some initial data. And then our instructional leadership team then plans to circle back and really dig deeper on that data, come back to our staff and kind of continue this process of reflecting, refining, and gathering again staff input in this process, because their input is really key in this. In fact, it's really the foundation or backbone of how Schools to Watch is set up. And yet we also acknowledge that there's kind of more that we'd like to gather from that. And so you'll also see we have also additional input sources of gathering parent and community feedback. We've been looking a lot at youth truth data. In fact, we just today met with some focus groups of students with our youth truth student senators for student superintendent student senate, and digging into some things that actually significantly overlap with a lot of these categories around academic excellence, around culture of belonging, and really digging into some of the things that our students and specific subgroups of our students are seeing and saying and experiencing. And so that all comes into play in this. Also within that, we're also looking at student grade data as a staff consistently, looking at who our students are that are struggling and what we can do to target those students, specifically even which subgroups of students are struggling at disproportionate rates. And so that's a data point our staff has been looking at each of our main grading periods at the quarter and semester, and then at the upcoming quarter again, to see ways that we can be improving. And then again, at the end of this time, our instructional cabinet is really the backbone of this work together as we look and reflect together, and ultimately with the goal of creating some goals and some action plans around what we see as areas for growth and celebrating some of our areas of strength. And then moving into next year with some real clarity of vision and purpose and some things that we want to seek to do better, so that in a couple of years, when we're back to then reevaluating and reflecting, we can measure our growth and see how we're doing, look for new areas for support and growth, and then also celebrate our great growth that we'll have as a team. And we plan to be submitting our application in September of this fall. And so we've got a fun rest of the year of really building this process out together and making our initial recommendations and goals together. And then we get to continue this continuous improvement cycle in years to come of looking at this and reflecting on this. So, and just want to thank Carl for all of his guidance, because he's provided a lot of guidance to me, and it's really paid off in our process so far this year. So appreciate your help so much. Yes, questions?
Yeah, Nathan, it occurs to me, I'd like to ask a question about student grade data.
Yeah.
And this may be a question for both you and Carl. I'm thinking for our elementary schools, we have standards-based report cards. And I don't think this directly addresses what you guys are doing here, but I am curious, when we look at student grade data, are we at the secondary level starting to look at that sort of standards-based assessment? So we're comparing apples to apples when we're talking about classroom, different classrooms. And I don't know how you get there, because I'm not, that's, I guess the question is it important? Are we doing it? How do we get there?
That's a wonderful question. And there's multiple layers to that question, but I'll start with saying that one of the reasons that we really are bought into and really focused on our PLC model this year is to pursue things like that, right? That grades shouldn't be an arbitrary measure, but really a measure that we believe is communicating clearly with the student and a parent if the student is learning and mastering what we want them to learn and master, And those decisions about what we want students to learn and master are really PLC questions, right? Like that's the first question that a PLC asks is, what do we want our students to know? And then the second question is, how do we know if they've learned it, which is, how do we grade that? How do we provide feedback and measure that growth? And so that's really the crux of what we're doing in our PLC work. To answer your question directly around that, we are not in a place of perfect alignment of exactly what that looks like. And yet it is something that our staff is actively pursuing. Seen multiple of our departments move into completely common assessments by grade and subject matter throughout this school year. It's been beautiful to watch our teachers really buy into seeing the value and power of this and looking at common grading practices as they do that. And so it's really a thing that's going to form and continue to be pursued over the coming years. And in some areas changes quickly, and in other areas takes more time as we again share our thoughts. And one word we've used as a staff this year is that productive disagreement can be really valuable in those conversations. And so not assuming that we just need to arrive at a shared agreement immediately, but that we have some really different perspectives as we pursue what we think is best for our students, ultimately ending in a spot where that grade data would be really something that's shared as far as what we're measuring. That being said, grades are the best way that our teachers in secondary are communicating with a student and with their family if that student is succeeding and learning and doing what they should be doing in that class. So it is a really valuable tool to utilize, although it becomes even more valuable when those grades mean the exact same thing as you look at what does an English grade mean and how is it made up. And so those are details that our PLCs are currently digging into. And yet it's very much in a great collaborative process. And those are our Monday mornings that we're really digging into those times together in ACT and TCT. Yeah, you're welcome. I don't know if you wanted that.
No, I would just add too that, you know, you always want student grade data to, like you said, to show what the students know. And when it's arbitrary, it's really hard. You don't know what one teacher's A is, another teacher's A. But when you start to add in other data sources, like the MDTP, our fast bridge assessments and things like that, you start to see a bigger picture of the student. And when teachers work to look at those different forms of assessment and they look at their grades, it's, you know, it's like if you're teaching in high school, if you're teaching an AP class and everybody gets an A, but only 20% of the kids pass the AP test, right? What's the value of the A? So I think when we look at our student grade data, we want it to be reflective of the hard work of A is excellent, B is above average, C is average, and that can be, you can see that across all these different multiple measures.
If I can, thanks. So I remember not too long ago, there sort of was a lot of discussion of there's too many assessments. They're taking away too many days from when we want to teach. And unfortunately, what I just walked away with is the more, you know, we need more common assessments. And then we listed about 3 that I hadn't heard of before several years ago. So just help me understand, have we reached a balance?
I would say that on behalf of Carl and Nathan that we have reached a balance. We try to communicate very clearly and early to our staff our windows for assessment. We have a common assessment at the secondary level, which I will tell you that hasn't always been in the case in the past. Like common in that we have an MDTP. We're talking about math. We're talking about, and we'll at our next board meeting present the data around the MDTP. We'll talk about fast bridge assessment, giving that assessment in August, giving that assessment again in January, giving that assessment near the end of the school year to look at learning over time. This fits perfectly. Mr. Unger, your question about the student data, our work with our staffs on clarity, when we work and think about, it's not necessarily about the teacher being clear, it's about the students being clear. Are they understanding what's expected of them? And how do we measure that proficiency? And can they articulate that? As I was watching Dr. Salcido present for Monarch Grove, I saw the work of clarity sitting on a video with a first grader or a kindergarten student saying, how do you know what you're learning? What are your goals? They have to take ownership of that. They have to understand that. It's great that our teachers understand that, but it's more important that our students understand that. The multiple measures, when we look at MDTP, fast bridge, a D, an F, a C, an A, and a B, whatever that may be, we're looking at patterns to be able to figure out how do we provide support for those students who need that support and that intervention. And then as Nathan talked about, that professional learning community conversation is ongoing. And as we think about this process, it truly is an ongoing reflective process. We are modeling to our students that we're always students ourselves. We're not just teachers, but we're actually students of ourselves. And we're analyzing and getting better every single year. And then the last piece that I want to talk about or just bring to your attention, again, it's an analysis. It's not a stopping point. Nathan and Carl both said that they'll submit their application in September 2023, but we will then have a site observation, a validation of the work of staff. And that's great. And Nathan mentioned this several times about that celebration. It's important to celebrate those wins. At the same time, we have to keep on pushing. And one of the great pieces of our district is we're never resting on our laurels. We're always pushing and striving for excellence. And I think that's really, really important to keep that eye on the prize because our students deserve that. Our community expects that. And we're at your will to make sure we carry it out. So that's our process with Schools to Watch. Thank you.
Well, thank you for this presentation. I will say I'm very excited to know that Laguna is on this path. I think one of the most interesting things I've done as a trustee, and it's been a little while now, was to be involved just as a board member, to be able to participate in the process at Los Osos Middle School. And it was really fascinating to see the buy-in from it. It speaks to the professionalism of our educators to see how enthusiastic they were to kind of prove their worth to the Schools to Watch team, as well as understand what they needed to do, what everyone at the site needed to do to go on that path. And it is a process, and it does go on to be able to stay at that level and continue performing at such a high level. And it really speaks to the professionalism of both our administrators and the staff as a whole, and the students to bring them along with it as well. So I'm very excited that Laguna is doing this, and Los Osos, keep up the good work. This is great. Thank you.
Ms. Sheffer, could I
Yes.
just, want to acknowledge the folks up there. I think they've really stepped in, leaned into this challenge. It's not easy, but I also want to acknowledge the school board. You're one of the few school boards, I might know of maybe 2 other districts in California where the board has made a commitment to Schools to Watch. And like Mr. O'Connor said, it's not, awards are great, that's fine, but this has nothing to do with the award. What this is it's a tool for engagement, and it builds on the idea that you are focused on bringing key groups together to orient a community around what's really important at the middle grades. It's the most unique program I've ever seen. It's honoring the difference that middle school is as compared to elementary and high school. It's truly, and Mr. Minor, I know you're figuring this out, middle school is a very unique structure, and it requires a focus in very specific ways. But to really bring out the best in a middle school community, you have to bring in we. It is a tool of engagement for key stakeholder, key groups. And when you pull those groups together and work intentionally in the areas you mentioned, what happens is this magical sauce is created that lasts beyond all of us. And I look forward for the next decade, 2 decades, to see not just San Luis Coastal's work building a middle school culture and a really vibrant middle school community at both of its middle schools, but really expanding outward to our region. And I just want to acknowledge Mr. Bloom, who has taken it upon himself to lead that effort and reach out to different districts, superintendents, principals, and encourage them to join in this process. And I'm just super proud of that. And I envision in 10 years, 15 years maybe, we'll have a county that has embraced Schools to Watch as a mechanism to honor and middle school, the middle school community, and honor the adolescent child, which I think is so important right now. always has been in my mind, but I'm really excited for where we're going. So thank you, gentlemen, and to the school board.
Right, I see Mr. Pinkerton chomping at the bit to discuss expanded learning opportunities program.
Yeah.
You're on.
All right. Well, tonight, we bring forward the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program plan. We've moved away from LCFF, which was meant local control funding formula, quote, local control, and just giving money to schools to make decisions, and kind of moved back in this categorical realm. And so you see a couple of those tonight on the agenda. We have another one coming up. As you heard tonight, the curriculum instruction materials budget will be increasing greatly over the next couple of years. And so we will be using some of those funds from the arts, music, instruction materials program. And that plan that we have to put together will come to the next board meeting. So tonight, 2 plans. The first one, Expanded Learning Opportunities Program. This is not the COVID funding, Expanded Learning Opportunities Program. This is meant really to assist families of students that are economically disadvantaged, English learners, and foster and homeless youth, to provide them with an extended learning day. So this plan that we put together will do that. It starts with the discussion of expanding the school year by 30 days. So there's really 2 requirements: 9-hour school day during the school year, and then we have to expand the school year by at least 30 days. So for us, that 30 days is summer school. On top of the summer school, we have added, working with our childcare partners, both before and after school components. So for the 30 days of summer school, students will be able to come to school at 7:30. We'll be able to go to summer school through that time period, and we'll be able to have the extended day. One of the requirements of this is that we focus on those 3 groups, okay, in particular. However, once we have put forward kind of the option for our economically disadvantaged, EL, foster homeless youth to participate in summer school, we can then open it up to all kids. So the summer program, ELOPE funds, will be used to pay for all kids. Again, we target those groups first to enroll. And I think from the summer school presentation, you'll see previously to the board, we get a lot of great participation with those 3 groups. So we don't have any issues with meeting any requirements for the numbers or percentages on that realm. And then my hope is that in the fall and through the rest of the school year, we'll work with those community partners. There's a lot that goes into that. Because right now, you think about construction happening at our school sites, you think about they're already kind of maxed out in terms of staffing and space and requirements. And so I'm really, again, we're having meetings now to prepare for the fall for potentially expanded programs at those sites. Eventually, my hope is that this is going to blend with our after-school sports that we started this year. Potentially with the Prop 28 funds. And I know Diane Frost is going to be meeting with the school sites to talk about those, how those are going to be dispersed and the programs at the sites. But my hope is that we can kind of, again, mix those together to provide kids these opportunities to not only have a 9-hour day, but also to have really great programs embedded in that 9 hours. And again, we have excellent childcare organizations in our community, super fortunate in that way, and they really they really want to be legitimate, teaching, working with kids, doing those types of things. So I look forward to, again, continuing to work with them and establishing these programs. For next school year, the ELOPE funds will pay for that childcare for our economically disadvantaged EL foster homeless youth. Depending on how that rolls out and the cost of that, if there is more funds available, then we can expand that to more families. So summer school, all students, but the 9-hour expanded day will specifically be for those groups throughout next school year for the 23-24 school year. Now, this is exciting. It's a great program, great for families. Again, a huge relief, I think, for a lot of parents and families as they go into it. It's already a potential discussion for budget cuts for next year. I will tell you already. put forth, right? So we'll see
And you're talking about on the state level.
at the state level. Yes, absolutely. Right.
Yeah,
So, how we receive the fund. So, it's really an interesting dynamic because these funds come to us based on our free and reduced lunch numbers. And what we're seeing is that it's really difficult with the new system with all kids getting free lunch to get parents and people to fill out the form. So then you can imagine what that means is less kids sign up, our percentage goes down, we receive less funds. So it's something it's just a constant battle to try to educate parents, to get people to do it. We're trying to utilize our student database system to ask those questions kind of when parents enroll each year, right? But then we get a lot of pushback about, hey, why are you asking me about my income level and things? And so we try to educate everyone as we go through this process and why we have to do it. But it really, it brings a lot of potential funds for not only our neediest groups, but also potentially all kids as we move forward. So it's something that I'm really excited about. Jeff Martin and his team that you've seen summer school. I mean, unbelievable what they're putting together. That mixed with this, our other groups to, again, a full day for kids, right, throughout the summer, a huge relief for parents, I think, and even for students to have a place to be and a good place to go. And this is K-6. Okay, K-6.
Mr. Buckman?
Yep. Well, you did answer part of my question.
Okay.
And I just have to, it seems that we see this fairly often, at least in the number of years that I've known. You guys, here's the money, do what you think's best, do it local. Oh, it's starting to work. Wait, we're going to take all the money away. We're going to do categoricals. We're going to tell you exactly what to do. And so it seems like we're going towards that. We're going to take all the money away and tell you what exactly to do. So when I actually looked up the code on this, it's plain as day that they're not planning to keep this money coming to us. And so
we'll see.
Well, so my understanding is the budget that's being put together right now, the governor had something like 85 million, and now we're talking millions and millions are going to be cut. And so I'm really cautious. Not sure how to vote on this because we end up putting it in place. We use state dollars, the state backs away, and then we look like we've done something wrong. And I have to tell you,
I initially didn't bring it forward the first year, I will tell you, because the requirements the first year when it came out was you have to set up this program for those specific kids. We're only going to fund you for those specific kids, which is 35% of our school district. And then the following year, you have to offer it to all kids with only 35% funding. So I was really apprehensive, and that's why you're just seeing this kind of opportunity to begin to spend this money. Now we do have to spend it. Otherwise we just give it back. So even if it's just for a year, we should do it, right? I mean, we should utilize those funds for the families and kids, even if it's for, a limited time. But yes, it's hard to set up a program and then back away from it, right? As you go through it, that requirement has gone away. So as long as you offer it to students, that's enough in terms of, kind of moving forward and being able to provide the services to kids. So, which is why I'm willing to kind of move forward now with a plan and to spend those dollars.
Mr. Banfield?
So the expansion of the day will happen at the after school
And before.
What will it look like before?
So it's kind of the same, like right now, all of our, well, I shouldn't say all, most of our school sites, I believe they might utilize some of Pacheco's time, but they're normally, working parents, school starts at 8:15, 8:30, they got to be to work at 7. So a lot of the schools offer a before school program for kids. So parents can drop off on their way to work. The kids are there prior to school, and then they, basically go to school at, when the school day starts. And then of course the program is there after school as well. I believe runs pretty much till 6 o'clock at night for parents to be able to pick up their kids as well for those working parents.
Did I read somewhere that at a given point, supper will be provided also?
So yeah, so we do provide breakfast and lunch right now for all students throughout the school district. At some of our eligible sites, so sites that have a larger percentage of free and reduced lunch, we're actually able to extra offer what's called supper program. So it's really kind of a dinner for kids. A lot of students get, right after school, basically. So great snack for them to have while they're there, after school and until dinner time. So Erin Primer and her team have done really a fantastic job of maximizing the use of that at our school sites.
You've been working with outside district help.
So City of Morro Bay,
Yeah.
Del Mar Elementary School, the YMCA does Monarch Grove and Baywood and Los Ranchos. And then the city of SLO does the city schools. So we will be looking to potentially expand to teach as well with these funds and part of the program. So it just depends on with teach, it's always the number of students. So what we've done is if there's not a lot of students there, if there's not enough to keep a program, have a program, then often we'll take those kids because they basically Pacheco and teach, they bus throughout the entire district.
Yeah.
So we'll normally take the students that need after school care and we'll take them to Pacheco for that service.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to, this is an action item, but I'd like to go to the public for any input. Okay, seeing none, we'll come back to the board. Again, this is an action item to approve the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program Plan.
I would like to make a motion to approve this expanded learning program.
I'll second.
Hey, Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
Mr. Buckman,
Yes, reluctantly.
Ms. Dobler-Drew, Mr. Unger,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. All right. Okay, moving on. Next is our transportation plan approval.
So the state also put forward money. For the most part, when the state adds funds now, we're not necessarily part of that, group that gets those funds, being a basic aid school district, right? And so this was one of the funding opportunities that, like ELO, that is potential for all school districts in California. This is a really easy plan to write because we have a fantastic transportation program for kids. Very expanded, transport lots of students. We have after school buses. We do a lot with our transportation department. So I just wanted to really bring you down to the nuts and bolts of this in terms of the cost or money that's associated with it. And so this potential funding level is estimated at a 60% reimbursement. So it's really good from what we've received in the past. So we're excited about that. And any potential funds to help our bottom line, our general fund are appreciated. So you kind of see the breakdown of the actual expenses. So the 60% reimbursement is 1.9 million. We currently already received 552,000. So it would be an increase of about $1.3 million dollars to the general fund.
This again is an action item, any public comment? Okay, any discussion by the board? Mrs. Roger.
Mr. Pinkerton, do we anticipate these funds will be ongoing?
Yes.
Excellent.
Until they
Thank
cut them. No. I'm hopeful that this is one that has not been discussed about being reduced or those types of things. I mean, anything can happen, right? I think that's, for a lot of districts right now, again, we're headed into an economic unknown about what's going to happen, right? For state funded districts as well as for us. And so oftentimes we're able to weather those storms a lot better than other school districts around the state. However, it affects us, right? So this is a potential loss of $1.4 million. So yes, I'm hopeful that it's an ongoing thing that will continue. Yes.
Thank you.
Just
Yeah.
one quick.
Mr. Buckman.
So are there any guidelines on the type of buses, the fuel of the bus?
They're not.
Okay. Thanks.
At this time.
I was just going to add that I believe that this is new this year, this state law.
Yes.
This was a hard fought law for school boards to push forward because we recognize that not only districts like ours, but districts throughout California are suffering from low transportation reimbursements. And so
Absolutely.
this is a win for everybody in California.
It's also one of those things too, I think we take for granted our transportation department at times. But we have a really robust transportation department. I mean, think of Peach School. Think of Pacheco, we bus kids from all over the entire school district, which is a pretty big school district, to take kids to, schools of choice and those types of things, right? So, we've had our share of having bus drivers, but like Mr. Unger said, not all school districts offer transportation. And so this was hopefully a nice way to incentivize more school districts to take that step and to have transportation for kids. So hopefully it'll help other districts as well as we move forward.
Yeah, many of our surrounding districts do not,
Yeah.
no longer offer transportation. All right, again, I am ready.
Okay, I'll move approval of item 9.04, the transportation plan.
And I'll second that.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Mr. Buckman.
Yes.
Ms. Dobler Drew.
Yes, and I just want to say I'm learning a lot about the wheels of the bus, that they go round and round.
Thank you.
And I'm a yes as well. Thank you. All right. Ms. Frost, we have two proposed revisions to proposed revisions to one and an annual review of another board policy.
Exactly. Thank you. Our first one is Board Policy 1313, and that is civility. It addresses the importance of civility in all district operations and discusses mutual respect. It includes First Amendment speech considerations. It prohibits disruptive behavior that creates an unsafe working environment and prohibits discriminatory, harassing, intimidating, and bullying behavior. And I recommend that this comes back for a second read.
Any public input regarding this board policy? Thank you. And is there consensus to bring this back for a second reading? Right, thank you. Next, our annual review.
Thank you. This is Board Policy 5116.1, intra-district open enrollment. It is an annual review, so annually we must review this. Our subcommittee did look in detail at this board policy and recommended no changes. It really allows our families to apply for open enrollment in any district school annually and sets forth the terms for that. Our open enrollment begins on March 1st. My recommendation, after having gone through the subcommittee with no changes at all, is that we discuss and hopefully approve this evening.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this policy? Okay, then we'll come back to the board. Any discussion? Then we need, yes, we do. We need a motion, please, with regard to item 9.06.
I'll move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mrs. Roger,
Yes.
Mr. Banfield,
Yes.
Ms. Dobler Drew, Mr. Unger,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Okay, we will, thank you very much. We will move on to the action consent calendar. Please let me know if there's any item you would like pulled. 10.01, approval of certificated and classified personnel items. 10.02, acceptance of donations. 10.03, approval of furniture and equipment request. 10.04, approval of minutes, December 13. 10.05, approval of minutes, December 22. 10.06, approval of minutes, December 22, special board meeting. 10.07, approval of minutes, January 17. 10.08, approval of new stipend. 10.09, proposed revisions to board policy 3516.5, emergency schedules, second reading. 10.10, proposed revisions to board policy 3551, food service operations cafeteria fund, second reading.
I move approval of item 10.01 to 10.10.
Second.
Mr. Unger,
Yes.
Mr. Buckman,
Yes.
Mr. Banfield,
Yeah.
Ms. Dobler Drew, Mrs. Roger.
Yes.
I'm a yes. All right, any items for advance agenda? Then moving on to reports by board members. Mr. Buckman.
I just wanted to report that as the California School Boards Association regional representative, I do sit on the one of two subcommittees, one being the Legislative Action Committee. The group met last Thursday in Sacramento. And so very, very interesting meetings. But what was really interesting to me was it was a good mix of, large, medium, and small district and differently funded districts, districts that are funded the way we are. And one thing I walked away with is the amount of poverty in the public schools in San Luis Obispo, even in quote unquote wealthy districts. And I'm glad that we're going to take those money that Mr. Pinkerton brought up. And I just wish there was something more we could do.
Anyone else? Right, thank you. We will adjourn this meeting. We will reconvene tomorrow at 1 o'clock for our appointment process for a new trustee. Thank you very much, everybody.